Blowing glass is an ancient form of craftsmanship used by artists for centuries. Its origin begins with the Roman Empire, who used it as decoration for the extremely wealthy. Blowing glass is a tradition that was passed on from generation to generation. Today, professional glass blowers design complex designs into their work. Blowing glass can be put into two forms. It can be blown into kitchenware such as cups, pitchers, and other everyday uses, or it can be used as decoration. Though blowing glass is a beautiful art of craftsmanship, the artist needs to remember a lot of steps that are in it.
Okay, so every day we come across glass objects everywhere we go. We look through windows, we look at computer screens, at our phones, we even grab glassware out of our kitchens. It's rare that somebody asks a question about how glass is made or what even is glass. Hopefully today I can just shed some light on some questions that anyone may ask about glass. Okay, first things first, we'll go over what category of matter glass falls into. As most of you know, matter has 4 different phases: solids, liquids, gases, and plasmas. For the sake of the demonstration, we're going to completely ignore these last 2 and focus on solids and liquids. Okay, so since glass has more traits regarding solids, it does fall into the solid category. But a lot of people ask, why is it transparent like liquids? When you think glass, think of this as kind of like a scale and think right about there. Glass has a crystalline structure, so its atoms are very tightly knit, but it also has just enough space between each atom, just like a liquid, for our vision to just pass directly through it. Oh, I kind of skipped one. All right, so finally we're going to move on to the conversions of matter. As you'll see later in the presentation, glass can't just be molded into the desired shape that you want. It needs to undergo a heating process, which turns it into molten/liquid glass. This glass can then be manipulated and turned into whatever the artist would have it to be. In the process of turning solid glass into liquid glass, what's actually happening is you're heat treating the atoms. The atoms are vibrating so much that it causes them to loosen. It causes them to spread apart into a movable state. That's where you get liquid. And the opposite happens when you are cooling the glass. The atoms come closer together and barely vibrate. Hopefully I was able to give you a little bit of good insight. Thank you.
So before we start going over how to blow glass and all that stuff, we need to know the basic tools for blowing glass. So the first thing you're going to need for blowing glass is the furnace or the glory hole. The glory hole is basically where all the melted glass is and where it is and where you collect it. But you wouldn't be able to collect it without the pipe. The pipe is really just a pipe. You put glass on one side and you blow it out through the other. So now we'll have the marver and the block, which are the 2 basic molding tools for the glass. The marvel is a steel table that's used to rotate the pipe while someone's blowing it to get it a good, nice, round shape. Same thing with the block. But the thing about the block is you need different size for blocks the more time you put the pipe into the glory hole to collect more glass. So you could say the block is one of the main parts of the tools for blowing glass. The other 2 smaller parts are the tweezers and the shears. The tweezers and shears are used for manipulating the glass and cutting the glass off. The shears are basically the scissors for glass blowing, and the tweezers are used for molding it around. Some people say that when you mold the glass around with tweezers, after it comes out, it's almost like it's taffy. You can move it around like that. And the last thing you'll need is the annealing oven. It's basically the refrigerator for cooling the glass down to room temperature. So those are some of the basic tools for glowing glass. Now we'll get over how to actually blow glass.
Alright, so the next step is to gather the glass with the pipe. Once it's already inside the oven, you need to gather it to begin the next step. You begin to roll and shape it, and that is the first process in making your glassware. Now, glassware is a fascinating object. It's beautiful, it's clear, but there's also something else that you can add to it to just add to its beauty. There's two different methods to color the glass, and the first one is striking the glass. You use powdered metal oxide, sulfides, and other chemical compounds which create this colored glass. When you take the glass outside of the furnace and it's hot and moldable, you could add gold ruby, selenium ruby, nickel. There's also iron oxide and sulfur, which this creates reds, yellows, violets. The iron creates blue-green, and the sulfur creates deep amber. You could use almost any element off the table of elements to saturate the glass with, and once the saturated glass is put back into the furnace, the heat is what actually creates all the different colors. The second method is a little bit more of a different process. All the little pieces right here are the struck glass, only broken up into little tiny pieces. This way you could have the clear glass as the background, but different pieces of colors added in to make it just a little bit different. You would take the glass, a blank piece of glass, instead of saturating it with the different compounds, take the blank glass out, and after it's been scattered on a line, they slightly roll it through and then stick it back inside the furnace. This way, since all of this has to be glass, it has to melt down into the actual blank glass. Then, once it's taken out, the next step would be to continue to roll and shape it, but then to begin to blow the glass, which, as you can see here, now you can use different methods, but all those little pieces will look like that. That's a different representation, but they'll have the small spots in the glass instead of this complete saturation. After blowing the glass comes the next step, which Brennan will show you.
Well, there's not a whole lot to cooling a glass. There's only 4 steps, but if you mess up the cooling part, then the whole thing's kind of ruined. So the first thing they do is they take the tweezers, and the tweezers almost double as scissors almost, and they take it and they run it right around where the pipe meets the glass to kind of cut it a little bit. And that's the first step. And then the second step is once it's cut and they have kind of a cut put in there, they take a wooden block, the wooden block is what they use to shape the glass, and they take the wooden block and they hit the pipe with it to see if they can knock the glass off. But it has to be wood, because the wood absorbs a lot of the shock to keep the glass from breaking. But if they hit it more, if it doesn't come off the first time and they hit it more than once, they increase the chance of cracking it. And the next step is they need to take the blown glass that's not on the pipe to the annealing oven. And when they put it in the annealing oven is set to 960 degrees Fahrenheit. And then over the course of 14 hours, they gradually cool it down, because if they cool it down too fast, it'll crack and break. And then the final and last step is once it's cooled and out of the oven, they take a grinding block, which is just kind of like almost like sandpaper, but for glass and stuff, and they rub it on they remove any sharp edges from the glass with the grinding block. So if there's any sharp edges, they'll rub it on that and it'll grind them away and make it smooth. And that's about all that's to cooling the glass. It's not very complicated. And that's about it.
Okay, so a major step for blowing glass is to be safe while blowing it. The first step for being safe while blowing glass is having precaution. Being very cautious of your surroundings is a major way to stay safe. Almost all of the surfaces and tools being used in the glass studio are scalding hot, and if an artist is not aware of his surroundings and cautious, he can severely injure himself. The second step is having assistance. Other people, other trained assistants, working in the workshop along the artist, help keep the artist safe while he's working and not paying much attention. If an accident does happen, an assistant is there to help call 911, and assistants also help prevent accidents from happening. The last step is having the appropriate clothing. Now, the next slide. If an artist is in the workshop and finds himself wearing something like this, he should know he's not doing it right. First of all, an artist that wears normal clothes is in danger of his clothes burning and is in danger of severe burns. Now, an artist that wears something like this is much safer. Clothes like this apron here help prevent fire from catching onto his clothes. Clothes like cotton are fire repellent and they're not as easy to catch on fire. Gloves like this help keep your hands from being burned. Boots and long pants, and they help protect from maybe shards of glass that broke off. And the eye protection here helps your eyes stay safe from any light and heat coming from the furnaces. So the 3 steps are precaution, assistance, and the proper clothing. They are what's important to stay safe.
Glass is very ancient and has been used for centuries. Although dangerous, it is a fun, ancient, and beautiful form of art. All these tedious steps develop a beautiful masterpiece. It is an interesting and ancient form of art. Blowing glass began at the height of the Roman Empire, and it is still a treasured form of art today, and it represents the living history of the Roman Empire. This art form is interesting and is a unique skill to learn. Each detail is painstakingly crafted by the artists. Whether simple or complex, each item is a witness to the dutiful